Well, what do you say we get going?
Let her rip.
Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we need a roll call.
I'll go ahead and do that. Member Cubberly?
Present.
Member Ali? You don't see her yet. Member Bates?
Here.
Member Dillingham?
Here.
Member Eller?
Here.
Member Griffith?
Here.
Member Heckelman?
Here.
Member Youngman?
Here.
Member McBride?
Here.
Member Pipes? Don't see Kevin yet. Member Stawicki?
Here.
Member Vineyard?
Here.
And I don't see Sean Williamson Jennings yet. You do have a quorum. I will monitor and let them in if they jump on.
Okay, item 2 is consideration of approval of the Charter Review Commission meeting minutes of August 10th, 2020.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. And then the only item that we have for discussion this evening is the conversation that we were having regarding the utility rates. We had come to at least some conversation about imposing the restrictions or the putting the onus on the city council rather than on the citizens. And the suggestion was made that we have the council required to bring the utility rates forward with each election, at least one per year. So Catherine's got us some language. Do you want to read that language, Catherine?
Sure, and I would note that we also provided the information that you all were asking about how other cities typically operate and how frequently they have rate increases. A number of them do it annually, but several of them do it every 3 years, so that kind of fits in with the language here. Basically, it would be changing section 2 in Article 16 of the charter to say that precedent to an increase in utility rates within the control of the city of Norman, such increase proposal for each utility must be submitted on a rotating basis to the legal voters of the city for their approval or rejection at the regular general election each year. And that's what we talked about last time, is kind of having them scheduled on a rotating basis. Then no one's saying, well, I don't want that on my council race. We can do it next time. Or having constant special elections that are hard to get voter turnout for. Then I added a sentence because I started thinking, what if something really awful happens and we need a rate increase sooner than 3 years to address an emergency need. And so I added a sentence that said, should an unexpected need for an additional rate increase for any utility arise prior to the regular election on which such an increase would normally be scheduled as provided herein, then a special election may be called for such purpose. And the remainder of that language is the same.
Commissioner Cubberly?
Catherine, I just have one question about the language. When you have it'd be scheduled, or let me go back, for approval or rejection at the next regular general election. Is a council race without the mayor considered a general election?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my only one.
Okay. The other thing I was going to say is it would be easier to explain this if we named the utilities, I feel like, but I didn't want it to appear or to accidentally leave out future utilities from this provision altogether, because then it will be seen as a way to sneak stormwater under the door.
Right.
Right.
Bob, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm just puzzled by the general election term. I'm glad it's flexible and it's like Catherine described, but I guess what does the term general election mean?
It's our regularly scheduled elections each year for elected office.
Okay. I guess Doug was referring to if you only have the even council wards and no mayor, then certain members of the city aren't voting, but it's still a general election.
Right, we would put it on that ballot. It's a little funky because it doesn't compare well to state or federal politics that have a general election in November. But there's some case law on Norman specifically about what's a general election, what's a special election, what's a primary election. And so I think we would be okay with this language.
Yes.
Possible suggestion is, if you want to clarify it, we could just modify it to say Norman general election.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Kathleen, then that would really have everybody voting every year then, right?
Right, on one utility or another. So you might have, I think we would need a water rate increase next. So that would be in February if this were already in place. And then the next February would be wastewater or sanitation. And then the third year would be whatever was left.
But to Greg's point, then when the even wards are running for their seats, the odd wards are still going to be out there voting on utilities.
Yes. And, we can even change this election or this language to say at the regular election in which ward or mayoral representatives are elected, just to be clearer.
I like that from the standpoint that when people read it, it's more easy to understand.
Yeah.
Because
I
I had that confusion because general election to me was more of a regularly scheduled general election would be for mayor when everyone's voting.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier for the average citizen to understand.
Exactly.
And will also ameliorate the potential desire for knowledgeable citizens to want to argue about what a general election is.
Mm-hmm.
No one argues in Norman.
Well, the disease is spreading to Garvin County right now.
Did anybody have any further questions?
No, it's going to increase our cost for elections, but so be it.
Yeah. At least some of the precincts would already be open and operating, but.
I guess I have a question. Is there a particular driving force about alternating the potential or the consideration for rate increases for each utility? Or could it not be something considered on an annual basis for all utilities and only vote on the ones, that particular utility that needs a rate increase? And that rate increase be dependent on the utilities director and the budget as it comes up. I'm not wild about rotating the vote on each utility because, like you said, Catherine, other utilities may come into play, and if they do, and there's like the stormwater utility, if a consideration for a rate increase is on the table for all utilities or not, depending on the need. Oh well, I'm just not crazy about to me, it's a complicated thing, and maybe I'm too simple-minded, but I really like the language, should an unexpected need, ... come up. That's powerful to me. I did consider, when we were looking at the other cities who consider rate increases annually, until that paper came up, I did talk to the city manager in Anadarko, and they consider annual rate increases based on the need of the utility. In their case, it's water and sewer particularly, but based, the rate increase is determined by the Consumer Price Index as published by the Department of Labor for the Southwest region, or 2%. And so, which is great, whichever is greater. So it's a fairly straightforward and simple mechanism. And if certainly if those needs were presented by the utilities director and run through council, and those criteria were met or not, there'd be a rate increase, or one to consider by the voters. Well, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
No, I don't disagree. And I've been conflicted over the last few days thinking about this, for some of the same reasons, thinking, well, what we're trying to do is, you know, not allow any sitting council to say, oh, we're not going to do that. And by doing that, do we have enough safeguard in there that we're not going to require an election without the utility director satisfactorily, you know, bringing forth evidence that says we need this, and I'm going to have a terrible time keeping up with you know, all of the various and sundry jobs we do, plus the environmental requirements, etc., without an increase.
To that point, though, I think back to Ken Comiskey's presentation, in which he was advocating for about a 3% increase, something like that, on an annual basis. And it didn't sound to me like it was going to be, if anything, it would be an anomaly for there to be a year in which, especially if they're on a rotating basis, a year in which a particular utility didn't need to have a marginal increase that would help keep up not just with the, say, a particular demand, but the ongoing, just ongoing demands of each utility.
No, I think that's right. I just think that absent, you know, that presumes, and I don't disagree, that we will always need a 3%. It would be extraordinary not to need a 3% increase, but there should be some sort of balance for that person that says, well, you're just going to raise my utilities every single year, 3%, one at a time.
But that's, you may be right about that, but mathematically speaking, even if we raise it 3% each time through there, it's a 1% per annum increase for each utility.
No. It's, you know, I get that. But
it actually gives.
We're talking about Norman.
Yeah. But it gives the utilities the mechanism that they're looking for without actually depriving the voters of the franchise. And I don't. Well, I see another way around it myself.
I would. I think not wanting to deprive my ability to vote on the utilities, I think we hamstring the utility departments so often, and for a simple cost of living rate increase. I mean, I have to raise my fees because my costs go up, and I don't poll my patients and say, please, I need a 5% rate increase because my lab costs and have gone nuts here. You just do what you got to do to stay in business. And I don't think 3% is out of line. And that's why I think this particular statement that Catherine wrote in here about should an unexpected need arise, the utilities director comes before council and says, these are what our costs are, this is what my budget is, and this is what we have to keep our heads above water. And just to maintain an even keel, and anything outrageous certainly goes before the voters. And I don't think that's unreasonable, but I think at some point we have to do something besides crisis management with our utilities, and not discounting the voters' input, especially when it's something outrageous, but just to keep it public, just to keep it so that our council members and can address concerns of their constituents, and let the council decide if the 3% rate increase is warranted or not unreasonable. I think the council needs to weigh in on that consideration, and let the voters talk to their council members. I think that's what they're for. But anyway, that's just my take.
The provision doesn't tell us how much to increase it, right? It just asks the council to put it on the ballot and set the increase.
That's correct.
Okay, that sounds good. It's flexible, like Jim was suggesting.
Yeah.
How many water rate votes we had in the last 10 years?
Not enough.
1,
Chris?
2.
One in was 05 and the other one like 15.
Oh.
So we're going from 1 or 2 to guaranteed essentially 3 every 10 years. That's good. I think that's right in the right direction.
There was a rejection somewhere in there.
10 or 11.
Yeah.
Got voted down.
When we tried to do the multi-year
Yeah.
rate increase.
At the risk of making it complicated, could we also provide that the utility not necessarily on the current rotation could be added to any particular year's vote? So let's say, again, maybe it's unexpected, or maybe there's some revision in costs that require, like we were just talking about, just require an additional consideration for a rate adjustment. Even if it isn't on the rotation, could we provide or give a provision for them to add that utility to the one that's currently being considered? And that way that kind of fits with the other concern about hamstringing it to just one utility every year if there's a need.
I think that would fit into the added language about if there's a need.
Well,
It doesn't say.
Yeah.
the added language talks about a special election.
So I could add language that it could be a special election or
Added.
a general election. We'll revise the
Okay.
general election language. But
That's my point, is as opposed to it having to be a special election, should there be a need, the one that's not being considered for that particular rotation could be added to the general.
Oh, that's a great point, because otherwise we would have to have two utility elections in 1 year if there was that need. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Could we not kind of split the difference here, where the city council weighs in based on if it's cost of living increase or below, they make the call, and if it's anything above cost of living, we take it to a public vote?
No.
Well, Tom, I think that one of the things that we discussed last month was the unlikely prospect that you're going to be able to get the public at large to decline to vote. Not so much a consensus on the part of our commission that shouldn't happen, but that it is not likely. It's going to be hard to get city council people to ask the public to give up their vote. That's my assessment anyway. I think it's been the case for the last 10 or 12 years that every time we've had our commission suggest some form of compromise in the direction that you're talking about, it just it led to no action on the part of the council at all to change the charter.
Okay.
Did I misstate that?
I don't think so.
No. Yeah, last time the Charter Review Commission was asked specifically to consider whether council should be empowered to increase utility rates not more than 3% annually without a vote. And that went nowhere. Do away with the provision altogether? That was the question, but I think you recommended something different. Does that sound right?
Yes, I think you're right. I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to do, if we're ever going to get rid of the provision, certainly not in my lifetime, I think we'll have to do it in baby steps. And I think this is a good attempt.
Well, I think at least it removes the city council itself as an impediment to the funding, the regular healthy funding of the utilities. We'll still be at risk for convincing the public of our case.
Yeah, I would say less of an impediment.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, you're right. But hopefully it puts the needs of the utilities ahead of the political interests of the council, at least to an extent.
Chris, I have a question for you. What are your thoughts on what's possibly about to be presented to council should we get through this and it comes out of the CRC? So,
well, I'm just getting caught up here, but the big ticket items, it looks like, I mean, sanitation, I don't know what Ken's presented to you guys, but sanitation looks pretty good. And the water reclamation facility looks pretty good at right now. It's water is going to be the focus probably for the next two increases. I would say we got to start blending the water. That's a DEQ mandate. They're picking on us on that, and rightfully so. It's a good thing. The metering, improving our metering that's something that probably needs to happen. Those are two big ticket items. And then the water treatment plant cost, we just added the new facilities, and we think the cost could go up. So Ken, I think he's right on that one. And then the next one is the augment water. We don't have enough water supply. We actually got nervous this summer. One of our couple of peak day uses is we ended up finding out we had a line break that contributed. We only can make about 25 million gallons a day, and we hit a 25. You can do that for a day or two because you got water towers and stuff like that. But then about the fourth day, you start getting nervous. So we're bumping our peak. That's all we have.
Yeah.
So to augment the lake, that ties into the reuse, which is we're doing the pilot at the wastewater plant. And then really right now, Ken and I talked about this, wastewater is paying for that reuse pilot, but really that's a water supply function. I mean, really doing good books, water should be paying for that, not wastewater, because they can put it in the river for cheap.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, the next tickets are just getting more water until we get up to meet our water supply plan. You know, we need to be able to make like 29 MGD and throughout the whole year.
Is there any plan right now for augmentation in any way, whether to drill more wells or to do something else? Is there any plan before council right now?
No, the water plan said, let's go get 2 to 3 MGD, which we're finishing those wells right now. And that kind of will just put us at ease for a little bit for 2 to 3 years, probably. And then the next big chunk was to take the water reclamation water treat it really good, put it back in the lake, and that be our augmented source so we can take more out of the lake. Because right now we're maxing it out.
Yeah.
So if we can't get that done, or that doesn't look to be a good thing, we have to figure out a way to get that next big chunk of water.
So,
Question.
Chris, if we were to be able to affect this rotating vote demand, that would put you on 2 increases for water in the space, theoretically in the space of 4 years, but even under this provision, it could be less than that if you decided to disrupt the rotation on behalf of water. Do you think that would function for you?
Yeah, I mean, those ticket items, the 2 next ones, that the blended water, that was like a $14 million ticket, and the metering is about a $14 million ticket. So he was just figuring on this next rate increase to get enough to make a mortgage payment on $28 to $35 million, because also he's going to get extra for the operational costs.
Uh-huh.
And a horizontal well. Hopefully that would get more out of the well. So, and then after that, we need to look at the water plan, but it gets expensive when we start talking about augmenting the lake. That next ticket item is going to be really big.
Yes.
Another unknown is chromium treatment. That has been held at bay in our well field. And if the EPA ever were to bring that up again and go more strict on the rules on chromium, right now it's 100. And we have wells that are, up 60, 70. So if that went down to 10, like California has moved forward with, that would take us out on the well field. So then 30% of our water comes from wells right now. We would then need to get a big ticket item to go start treating the well water just to keep those, or we lose those. We lose 30% of our supply. So again, the water supply I think that's going to be our biggest ticket items over the next 10 years. I mean, sanitation and water reclamation might need a bump here or there just for, keeping up with the cost of living, paying the electric and the chemicals. But the water is going to be the thing that dominates probably.
What kind of rate increase would you estimate that you would need over the course of, say, the next 2 to 3 years to cover those extraordinary costs?
Okay, I got to look at that up.
It's okay.
Yeah, in his PowerPoint, he kind of did enough to get us what we do is we take the rates and we try to, not put it all on the fixed income. Mm-hmm. He kind of put it heavier in the higher users, but he just kind of put it across the rate users. And then we have a little Excel spreadsheet that you plug that in and you kick out if you can make a mortgage payment on $28 million,
Yeah.
Loan would be. And he did one loan for 15 years. And there's a little leeway. You can do a 20-year if you wanted to carry it a little longer. If you thought the assets would last that long, you usually try to make the life of it just be the life of the asset. So when you retire it, but I can look at that and try to tell you a projection of what I think it's going to be. But I don't know. I'm worried that this first one, that'll help us a lot, but then we're going to have to come back and get a next one for the water supply.
Yeah, I understand. Well, back to the chemical issue, we lost several wells several years ago to arsenic. And there was a reclamation effort made on one well, and it was reasonably successful. Costs were higher than just water from the lake and the wells by about, 50 cents a thousand, something like that. Has there been any movement or any consideration of reclaiming the lost wells? I believe they were along flood. There was like 6 or 7 wells that we lost because of that. And there was going to be a large reclamation hub that was considered. And is that still on a back burner somewhere?
Yes. So that blending site, as part of this next rate increase, if we could get all the wells consolidated to one spot, then we will be able to set up a treatment train for arsenic, set up a treatment train for chromium. Then we're prepared to treat all of them at one site. Right now, they come in like spokes on a wheel, and they come in, and it doesn't make sense to put in that many treatment places.
No, I agree.
Yeah. And I was going to say one more thing. I started at the water plant in 2005. You're speaking of arsenic. We had 13 wells in 2005. Real past, we went down to 15 wells.
Yeah.
We are right now at 32 wells. So that's been, what, 15 years. We went from 31 to 15. Now we're 32 wells. So we've only gained 1 well since 2005, and that's our supply. Lake is the same. And after we finish these 9 wells, we'll be at 41 wells. So again, we lost a lot on quality and didn't get any more quantity.
Yeah.
And that's why it's going to get even more pressing over these next 5 to 10 years to make sure, and we got to get a chunk of water.
Well, that's the cost of water that we would buy. We were paying an outrageous amount of money buying water from Oklahoma City as the need arose. Are those costs, have they gone up, or are we still using Oklahoma City water when we need to?
Yes, that's another one. They made us adjust. They used to let us just use them as a peak, so we could only buy it when we wanted to, and they charged a lot for it. But we didn't have to use it every day. We just say summertime, we'd turn on for like a month at a time and just peak with them.
Yeah.
They bought assets to be able to deliver us that peak. So they want a mortgage payment. It's kind of like having a renter. You don't have the renter just rent from you 1 month a year. You're still paying your mortgage payment on your property, right? So just to be a solid customer and pay a little bit every month. So they told us we're gonna move you off of that. No more of that rate. We're gonna go a take or pay. You have to be logged in and you have to pay us so much for a base. You're going to reserve water and take it for a little bit of extra variable cost, or we're going to charge you the base no matter what if you want to be guaranteed that amount of water. So now we use them for a 1 MGD, 1 gallons per day. And then we do our wells on top of that, and then our plant on top of that.
Yeah.
So, and it's about I think it's at 205, 210 per thousand right now of their potable water. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's still for a base water. I want to get our water treatment plant latest numbers, but we used to be in the $1.50 to $1.90 per thousand, make it for. And that's what I always tell our water plants, as long as we're making it cheaper, that doesn't look that good. You know, we're doing better than them. But if they ever make it cheaper than we make it for, we probably have to consider looking at that. I mean,
it seems like they had a plan at one point in time that instead of an on-demand or as needed, they had a 2 million gallon plan that we paid for it whether we used it or not, but the rate was pretty cheap. So I don't know whether that's still.
That's the 210, I think. That's what this one is. It can be 2 million gallons. We can, once you reserve that rate though, you can't go down. So if we start using 1.5 million gallons, then our contract, we are at minimum 1.5. You can't go back to 1. Yeah. So they'd love for us to continue to increase.
As I remember.
And then the other things, they're kind of fair. They're not, they're transparent, but they give you 5-year contracts. And they pretty much, we look at them, it's a 4 or 5% increase each year. So every October 1, we know the rate is going to go up 4 or 5%. They'll show us the contract and show us what we're paying. And then each 5 years, their trust renegotiates a new contract and sends it to us.
Gosh, do we get to vote on that?
No.
At some point in time, I don't think it's unreasonable that we ask our voters to consider, look, this is just cost of doing business. 3% is not outrageous, but you get the council to buy in so that they can say, look, voters, this is just the cost of doing business. Go to any business, and if they charge more for their goods and services, it's because their costs go up. Oh, well, I'll shut up. I'm done.
There is a bit of a mismatch because, Chris is telling us that our priorities are water, then maybe sewer later, whereas our schedule is, to do each one on an even basis. So that's not matching. I know the emergency provision allows us to stick the water in any year we want, but I just wonder if our need is not matching our provision here. We'll work out that.
The problem that we have is getting the city council disciplined to bring forward rate increases on a regular basis. And this is an attempt to try to create some discipline on council by making it mandatory that they review it. It is a big issue because it's so difficult to get council on a yearly basis to really look at the utilities and say, hey, we need to bring forward something. I agree with you that this doesn't really address water because they may need a couple of rate increases. But I think this is the best we can do, short of going to gyms, get rid of it, and either do a cost of living and without a vote, or just get rid of it all totally, which we know in the past has not been successful in either getting out of council or getting to the voters. So I think this is the best attempt that we can do to try to push council. This is kind of a nudge, a legal way of nudging council. You've got to bring it forward.
But I like what we have in front of us. I think it's better than what we have now, far better. I guess what I would think is the alternative that I see that I think I just say it out loud and just see what people think is don't tell the council which utility. Just tell them you have to have it on the ballot, and then they can look at the priorities and say, okay, the priority is water. Water goes on the ballot. I don't know that that's better because it's less predictable, less structure, but I think that would be your alternative to match your priorities with your ballots.
Well, and they should be getting that kind of direction from staff anyway, I would think.
Yeah, they do get that through the budget process. I was just thinking about all these cities that do the rate studies, and we do our own version of that, I think, just about every year through the budget process. And maybe it's just council, you have to identify the utility with the greatest need from this annual rate study and take that to a vote.
I like that.
Chris, would that help you?
Yeah, that would help.
Well, it solves one of my biggest problems, which is this water issue. And if we need to look at and send water to the voters 3 years in a row, rather than doing one big water rate hike 1 year and having to wait, I think that would also enable Chris to do better planning.
Well, that was Ken's argument as well, that if we can get on a consistent path, that it'll help the utilities director actually run a smoother operation. And if we have enough flexibility for the current anomaly where maybe water has to take a couple of swings first, it still would be good progress, I think.
Well, I agree with you. I think the utility that has the greatest need be the one that comes before the voters, and the other one or two take a back seat for a while. And so I think that's a wise move. I think that may fly.
Do we just strike the rotating basis so that each utility must be submitted at the general election, and therefore it's up to the council to determine which of those utilities actually make a ballot, but we require by the charter that each general election there is a utility vote?
I like that.
Yeah.
Because you might have two utilities that really have great needs. I could think of 10 years ago when sanitation and wastewater both needed rate increases at the same time. And, we pushed things off. And so although water right now, this is not going to go, even if this gets through council and gets to the voters and the voters actually approve it, it's not actually going to become effective for a couple of years or more. Right. And so water at that time may not be as critical.
That's true.
But I do think that taking it out of the rotating basis and making council look at, do we need a rate increase this year? And it may only be 2 utilities or may only be 1 utility, but I do like that idea of just requiring that review every year, and then with the possibility of a vote.
And the greatest need being presented to the voters.
Correct. And it could be 2 utilities, but it may only be just one.
Yeah.
But it should never be 0 unless there simply isn't a need.
Right.
Yeah. And that would be the best, that would be the dream scenario if the budget's going well and with the income is what it is and utilities don't need a rate increase. That's just a voters.
And Mr. Kaminsky's presentation indicated that it would be the responsible thing, even in that case, to have some sort of a marginal increase just to keep up with cost of operations.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have something that we can vote on?
Catherine?
I just want to mention,
You look confused.
I think it's important. I heard some mention of some language that would allow council maybe to have an out if there were no budgetary needs. I think it's important to not have that language because politically that would be a very convenient escape hatch.
I agree.
And so I think we need to compel a vote and then make that kind of a slot in which they have to select what to place, like the discussion was mentioning.
Catherine, you're muted.
Greg's right.
Or absent the truly extraordinary situation where the utility director comes to council and says, after thoroughly considering this, I don't think any of our utilities need a rate increase this year.
And we still have the out should the unexpected need arise.
Right. But they have to consider it. And if there's need, they're going to have to send something to the voters every year. I like it.
I'm with Greg on that being more than a consideration. I think the vote should be compelled based on Ken's premise that they need something every year.
Yes.
In order to run smoothly.
Yeah, this has to be, and I think this will actually help interest our electorate in passing this charter change. If we truly are going to not dilute the franchise and we are not giving council a fail-safe to simply do nothing, this does two things. A, the franchise is still there, but B, we don't have the situation absent a true disaster where the utility rates are going to jump an extraordinarily large amount.
Exactly.
Right. I think you're right. I think that's the key.
Catherine, did you get all that?
I am too. I'm sorry if you can hear my typing.
Yeah, if I could put it all into words, I'd make a motion. So if Catherine has language, I make a motion to incorporate all of the good ideas that we have been discussing in the mandatory one thing goes, at least one thing goes to a vote of the people every general election.
Based on a priority of need, right?
Yep.
Maybe it's better for Catherine to consider all the suggestions and bring us back language next time.
That's what I do.
So that we can actually see it and vote on it.
Oh, can you see the stress on my face as I'm trying to?
Yeah, you look a little deer in the headlight.
No pressure, Catherine, not at all.
Well, I think I'm pretty close. If you want to hear it, I would probably still tweak around on it a little bit, but I have, on an annual basis, staff shall prepare and submit to the City Council a rate study for each of its utilities. Upon receipt of such rate studies, Council shall submit the utility or utilities with the greatest need for a rate increase to the voters at the next election at which ward representatives or the mayor will appear on the ballot.
When you put it for greatest need, in what we were just discussing, that could mean, though, only bringing one forward when they all need it, but it's not the greatest need.
Yes.
Right. I put
And
in
so
there utility or utilities
Yeah, she put
for
a,
that, but because there may be one that has a need, but maybe Chris says, but that can wait a year. It's tough.
or you could say at a minimum, the utility or utilities with the greatest need.
Or one or more. Yeah, I think we need some wordsmithing. And
Yeah, we need to look at that a little more and think
one
about
more
that.
swing. Yeah.
If we want to get to the intent that the discussion was showing.
I would suggest that you could do less. Once we compel a utility to go on the ballot, then the council simply has to pick the one that they want to go on there. I can only imagine they'll use need as a criteria. I don't think we have to compel them to use need. I think we just have to compel them to put it on the ballot, and one or more utilities being important, so they have to do one, and they could do more if they wanted.
And that need determined by Chris and his budget analysis. So I kind of like that.
I do too. I think council is typically going to look to Chris for what the needs are in the first place.
Right. That's been one of my, yeah.
Okay, so what about on an annual basis, staff will prepare and submit to the City Council a rate study for each of its utilities. Upon receipt of such rate studies, Council shall submit a rate increase for one or more of the utilities to the voters at the next election, at which ward representatives or the mayor will appear on the ballot.
I like it.
And then I think we would still maybe want to add in language to allow for a special election in case, I don't know, just the example I keep thinking of is, a tornado hits the plant, something bad happens.
Yeah.
Well, the entire last half of section 2.
Or the federal government requires us to begin a new program.
Yeah, all of our wells go offline because of a new chromium regulation. Yeah.
And we have to buy from Oklahoma City.
So I'll add that sentence that was in the previous language to the end of this that says, should an unexpected need for an additional rate increase for any utility arise prior to the regular election on which such an increase would normally be scheduled as provided herein, then a special election may be called for that purpose.
Carol, would you like to make that into a motion?
Do you want me to share my screen so you can actually see the words?
Yes.
I'm visual, so I
don't know
that.
that I can make it big enough for me to
We'll see.
read.
It's that second paragraph.
Oh, dang, you're good, girl. Okay, I move that we amend the appropriate section of Article 16 in the City of Norman Charter to provide that on an annual basis, staff prepare and submit to the City Council a rate study for each of its utilities. Upon receipt of such rate studies, Council shall submit a rate increase for one or more of the utilities to the voters at the next election, at which ward representatives or the mayor will appear on the ballot. Provided, should an unexpected need for an additional rate increase for any utility arise prior to the regular election on which an increase would normally be scheduled as provided herein, then a special election may be called for such purpose.
Wow.
Do we need to add this sentence from section 2? To me,
I was just looking for
the
that.
charter will supersede all provisions in conflict therewith anyway, but I don't want to fuel a conspiracy theory that we're trying to get rid of something.
No, I totally, I was just looking up at the top for that. Yes, and include section should an unexpected need for an additional. Don't mess with your screen while I'm trying to work.
Sorry. There you go.
Should an unexpected need for an additional rate increase for any utility arise prior to the regular election on which an increase would normally be scheduled. Wait a minute. This section is self-executing and shall supersede all provisions in conflict therewith. Yeah, legislation may be enacted to facilitate its operations, but no ordinance shall limit or restrict the provisions thereof. So my motion is that we include all of that in the appropriate new charter amendment.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Let me get back to full screen so I can see you. I don't know if Brenda's able to do the roll call for the vote. Are you ready to take a vote? I'm going to do a roll call because the open meeting act says we have to.
Want me to do it, Catherine?
Yeah, if you've got it pulled up. I've got about 3 screens up, so.
Member Coverly.
Yes.
Member Ali. Aisha.
Yes.
Member Bates.
Yes.
Member Dillingham.
Yes.
Member Eller. Did we lose Jim?
Yes, I think we did.
Okay. Member Griffith.
Yes.
Member Heckelman.
Yes.
Member Youngman.
Yes.
Member McBride.
Yes.
Member Stawicki.
Yes.
Member
Yes.
Vineyard.
Yes.
And Chairman Thompson.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Did I skip anybody? I didn't, did I? Okay. I think I have everyone.
That brings us to item 4, which is miscellaneous discussion. Does anybody have anything they want to discuss?
I want to add something. You guys just made my day.
I just would like to add that I know council will have to direct this, but it's become very apparent to Catherine and myself that we need some recommended changes in the area of recalls.
Yeah.
So that'll probably be coming back to you as an amended resolution. There's just some areas that really don't quite function well like it's written. And we just need to get that cleaned up.
Oh, we're so grateful for another item.
The softball.
Yeah.
Real easy one.
The second easy one.
Yeah.
Dealing with the first easy one next.
We didn't want you to get bored.
Too kind.
I know. It's time.
The other thing, Bob and I talked about this earlier, is you have to prepare a final report, and it has to be voted on by a supermajority of the quorum or of the body to go to council, a final report, so we can include this utilities language. If between now and your next meeting they do pass a resolution and add recall to it, then we wouldn't quite be done, but I can go ahead and start working on that. It's just basically pulling in all the language that you've adopted over this last year or so. And then you all would have to meet at least once more to vote on that.
Okay.
Yeah, take care of that in your spare time.
No problem. And you need to have a public hearing.
Well, that's right.
That's always interesting during the pandemic.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wow.
As is everything.
Yeah.
Times.
This fun. I so miss this.
I love that you enjoy it so much.
It's crazy, but I do.
Well, if there's
Why
no,
I do what I do all day long.
Mhm.
I'm an addict.
It's never boring.
Never.
if there's no further discussion, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
It's
Thanks,
a good
Bob.
idea. I got two hungry cats.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good
See ya.
night.
Bye.